Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, I'm going to be covering another miscellaneous topic, this time looking at England's secret weapons. Now, England is the adversary that is going to focus mainly on building, and that is with that loss condition here. And it says, a proud and mighty capital. It says, if 7 or more buildings are ever in a single land, the invaders win. Now, the way that England is going to push this loss condition is with its escalation, and it says on each board with buildings, build in the land with the most buildings. So eventually, you're going to have a land that's being built up, and the escalation is going to push that loss condition. And now England has plenty of other rules that can push this loss condition. Mainly, it's with that high immigration tile, which essentially creates a land type that's going to be building before the ravage and before the regular build. And I'm not going to go through all of the rules. I do have an England guide if you want to take a look. I also have plenty of England gameplay videos if this is an adversary that you're struggling with. So what's the point of this video? The point of this video is to show some of the events in this game that can amplify England's ability to build that proud and mighty capital. I want to prepare you guys, or at least train you guys to plan around these events so that you can tackle this adversary better. Now over here, I have 4 events, and the first one is going to be events that have disease ignore. So there's 2 types of disease ignore. There's irregular outbreaks, and there's lingering plagues that I know of. I should probably go through the deck and look through all the cards, but I know those 2 exist. And I think, my guess is there's probably between 3 and 5 events. Once again, I'd have to go back and look. But essentially, these disease effects are going to say that disease doesn't prevent builds this turn, or this phase, this invader phase. And as a result, that means disease on the board is no longer reliable at stopping builds, including the escalations. So I'm going to create a hypothetical here. I've set up this deck so that it would line up like this. Okay. And let's say this is how it looks. And this is very unrealistic, but let's say I have it looking like this. There's 5 buildings in this land, and I have jungle is building this turn. Well, that means this disease goes away, and I'm okay. But I need to be playing around the escalation. Remember that escalation is going to build in the land with the most buildings. So I have 5 buildings, so there's an extra build action that I have to play around. Now, of course, there is that coast card in here, but the chance of there being an extra build is 4 out of 5. So there's an 80% chance that I'm going to get an extra build on this build card. So I need to play around it. So essentially, this land is actually building twice. Now, if you imagine if this disease didn't exist, well, now I lose the game. This is one of England's secret weapons, because now if I get a disease ignore on this turn, I lose the game. And it is an escalation. So let's say this is the event. Okay, they're going to build, and then they're going to escalate, and then I'm going to lose. So one of England's tools is these disease ignores, and you need to be able to play around them. I know you can't always play around them, but it's something to consider. And this is actually the unfortunate situation with disease, and why it's kind of overcosted is because it's not completely reliable. There's going to be situations where it's just not going to work. And that one time where it's not going to work is going to be the one time when it loses you the game. Okay, looking at the next event here, I have Thriving Trade. And this says on each board, add 1 city to a coastal land with cities. Now, the way that you can play around this card is you just have multiple coastal lands with cities. There. And then you're fine. The card also adds a disease, so it kind of stops an extra escalation or an extra build in that land, which is kind of nice. Now, why am I saying this card is bad? Well, there are some cases, and I've actually had a game where we lost to this card, where the player had they had 6 buildings in a single land, and they had only that 1 land with built-up invaders, and we were in stage 3, and we were still healthy. So they didn't have to play around escalations. All of the escalations were gone. As I'm flipping up over all of these, they didn't need to play around any build actions in the land. And they thought they were fine, right? There's no way for them to cause extra build action. Well, there's some events in here, but that can. But they were in this situation where they just had this one built up land, and they had no other coastal lands with cities. Thriving trade came down, added that seventh building to the land, and they were dead, and we lost the game. So this is another card for you to play around. This is a lot easier to play around than Disease Ignore. Like Disease Ignore, you really can't play around it. It's just kind of a reality. If you're using Disease, you just have to realize that it is a liability. This is something that you can play around as long as you have two lands with coastal cities, and you also have to kind of create a situation. Like having 6 buildings in a single land versus England is very dangerous. So yeah, you kind of have to have that specific situation. Okay, let's look at the next event here. And as we go to the right, we're going to get more and more to the edge casey stuff. And this is Provincial Seat. And it says on each board, choose a land with cities and build there. Very similar to Thriving Trade, where if you have multiple targets, you don't have to pick your edge case land. So in this case, if you look at my board, I only have 1 city, so I have to pick my F2. If this land was built up, say it looked like this, I only have 1 city, I have to build there, and I lose the game. Because now there's 7 buildings. But now if I have, like, let's say some inland cities, well, now I can choose one of these lands instead. So it's probably a little bit worse than Thriving Trade, but it's still a pretty brutal card that England can use, and well, you have to play around it. You know, this card can be weaponized against you and really screw you. Now, the most important weapon that England has is this last event here, and this is the most important card that you should always be playing around against England, and that is Sprawl Contained by the Wilds. And it says you get to add a wilds to a land without invaders, and then build in the land with the most buildings. This is essentially another England escalation. It's another way for them to progress that loss condition. And just an incredibly brutal card. And you should always be factoring this card in. Now, there are some cases in the game where you cannot play around this card. It's like there are some situations where England is going to be building like 3 or 4 times in that coastal land or that one specific land, and you can't stop all of them, and all of a sudden this will add that 5th. And so one thing to point out here before I end the video, and that is, notice all 3 of these edge cases are all healthy. Yeah, that's right. Wildfire is a good spirit. You got to go Blighted. No, but actually, right? So, if you're Blighted, you don't have to worry about these events, and that is something to keep in mind. I know I talk poorly about Blighted spirits on this channel quite a lot, but going Blighted does have its advantages. So, being able to dodge these edge cases is an advantage. Now, I'm not saying going Blighted is a good thing, because I think good players can play around these cards and minimize the chances of losing to these cards. I think it's very, very rare if people are playing around them. I think the chance is probably less than 1% to lose to a card like Building Sprawl. But like I said, there is that advantage. If you do go Blighted, if you do have that Shadows or that Bringer and you're taking the extra Blight, well, now you don't have to play around these edge cases. So if you like this video, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.